So the first of our speakers, I thought was on his own, but it turns out he's got some colleagues with him. So I'll let him introduce his colleagues once they're all up here. We're kind of blessed with the emergency services today. Starting with our first speaker, who's been part of the Metropolitan Police for 43 years. Still at the Met today as Director of Operational Support Services. It's a position he's held now for over 8 years. And in addition to his role with the Met, he acts as the National Police Chief Counsel for Rescue and Recovery, and has done that for over 3 years. He's got numerous qualifications, including a Master's in Business Administration. He's a member of the Chartered Institute of Management, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. He's a long-standing member of the IVR, and if you're short of a bricklayer, he's a qualified brickie. Why he added that to his bio, I don't know, I thought I'd use it. You please welcome Terry Hunt and his team.
Good morning, everybody. That's quite a challenge to start with, isn't it, being the first speaker and an introduction. Actually, the qualification that I'm really proud of is actually the bricklaying one, because it took me ages and it was completely out of my comfort zone. So and I've used it as well. I'm quite old now, but I have actually built stuff and used that qualification, unlike some of the others. Anyway, so good morning. My name's Terry Hunt. I am the Director of Operational Support Services in the Met. It is quite a big job, interesting, but one of the areas that I find most fascinating is the vehicle recovery aspect. Even better than all the fleet vehicles, so I'm responsible for the 5,500 police cars as well. So we've got a covert fleet, all fancy sorts of cars, you know, from the liveried stuff that you see flying around London and other places to all sorts of specialist vehicles, including 27 boats on the Thames. So it is quite big, but I enjoy it. But vehicle recovery really is my passion. I'm also the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council as well. I was asked to take that role up some 3 years ago. And it is voluntary. I don't have to do it. I don't get paid for it. It's completely it's something I want to do because I'm passionate about the recovery industry. And I think that we can add a lot, the police, to the recovery industry. And hopefully today, from the people you're going to hear from, which I'll introduce in a minute, few videos and an update on some of the stuff you might be keen to hear about, i.e. the stat fees. You know, hopefully you get a different impression from us. I'd like to think that when we walk away from today, you know, that you'll be able to pick the phone up to me, or to Mick, to Matt, to Emily, and talk to us. You know, because I find that normally better rather than listening to rumours and nonsense that's in the press and media. You just phone us up and we'll have a discussion. So, firstly, thank you to Richard and Derek for a very kind invite today and the kind words that you've been saying. It really is a genuine privilege for us to be able to be invited and to speak to you all. And I think our relationship with Prof has gone from strength to strength. You know, it's not that old, really. And I do think it's a mature relationship. It's one that's open, it's transparent, and of course we never always agree. We never always agree, but we're mature enough to have a discussion, and when we walk out the room, we're together on the issues. And I think that's really important, and I want to get that across to everybody today, that with one voice, we can make things happen. You know, if we're bickering amongst each other, and it's never going to work. It's just like divide and conquer. That won't work for any of us. So thank you, Richard. Thank you, Derek. And thank you as well for your expertise and guidance. You know, we often phone you. We ask for your counsel and advice on a range of issues, and what comes back is really good, productive, and makes us think. So thank you for that. I'll introduce you to my team. So I've got Emily, who's my PA, and she just sorts everything out for us. So welcome, Emily. Mick Burke, who'll introduce himself, but Mick's the head of the vehicle recovery in the Met. And Matt Wilkinson, that works with Mick, Matt's the guru on all things legislation. And some of the stuff that you hear from Matt is really, really interesting. What he'll also do is just update you on the stat fee, where we are, and it's very live. So as of now, we can tell you exactly where we are with it. But I won't steal Matt's thunder, but we'll update you on that. So there's, what I also want to say, there's a number of other bodies representing the vehicle industry, vehicle recovery industry. And we are aware of negative articles in the press, particularly aimed towards the police. This is not all the other stuff that's going on in the Met at the moment. Of course, we are under special measures, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in relation to the vehicle recovery world. And it's quite upsetting, quite frankly. It is upsetting because it's not the truth. It simply isn't fair, and it's not the truth. And I can't really go into that today, and I don't want to, because I think we're more professional than that. But my plea to you is, whatever you read and whatever some of these other trade associations are saying, please don't always believe it, because it's not right. It's simply not right. The challenges around stat fees has been ongoing now for probably best part of 5 years. And I can categorically tell you, it's us, the Met, that's been leading the charge. Absolutely, 100%. And we're still continuing to do that. And I said it's very, very disappointing when we just read things in some of your trade magazines that are just not right, not right. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to do that with the support of Prof. And I genuinely believe we will get that over the line. We will get it over the line. I said I don't want to steal what Matt's going to say, and I've probably come close to the edge already. So I'll stop there. But Matt will talk to everybody about that. The second thing really is, I just want to talk about, and it's probably a plea from me direct to the industry, is one that we want to work with you. You know, we cannot understand why you guys are not bidding for our work. You know, there's other third-party organisations that sort of come in and they appear to take the money. You know, but we want to work with you guys. You're the guys that's doing the work. You're the guys that really understand our contracts. And I want to get across today that we want to work with you. I think it's one of confidence. I need to be able to give you confidence to bid for the work. And certainly Mick is going to cover off what we want from police contracts and what we expect. I personally think it's a confidence issue with you guys, but I just want to tell you directly, I want you to start bidding for police work, and I also want you to bid on a fair price. You know, I don't expect a free service. You know, I don't expect you to be storing vehicles at zero cost to yourself. That's just not fair. But at the same time, when you bid for these contracts, when you bid for the work, you need to put in a commercially viable bid. The issue of a stat fee is a complete and utter red herring. You should almost ignore it. It's what does it cost you as the industry to recover that vehicle, plus your 10 to 12% on top. That's not unreasonable. That's what we do day in, day out with all sorts of contracts. We don't expect you to be providing a service to us for free. That's not. I wanted to tell you direct so you hear it from me rather than with a rumour mill or for some negative press. So the partnership with Prof will help us do that, I think. It's definitely cemented our relationship. It provides us all, provided we stick together with opportunities in the future. So I think I'll sort of stop now. Mick and Matt from my team are going to talk to you more in depth about police contracts and legislation. And I said that hopefully at the end of this session, you'll have the confidence in us, the confidence to bid for police work in the future. And if you're unsure, we're around all day. So, you know, if you don't want to ask questions in an open forum, then please grab one of us during a tea break, a lunch break, and we'll try and answer your questions.
as Terry touched upon, we joined Prof at the first conference, and I support Terry in his role on the National Police Chiefs Council, and a lot of that is in regards to, we get questions from across the country, from all the police forces. It'll either come from Matt and myself. We have a national responsibility for vehicle recovery across the whole of the UK for counter-terrorism. So there's sometimes we'll work in other regions, other forces. You may not know we're picking up vehicles, but we also have that responsibility in the Met. Prof, it's been an interesting journey for us. I think it's a pleasure to be here today. I think it's a pleasure to be, you know, there's a bit of a story behind that. You know, Richard was having a near-death experience at a conference in Derby, and the option was give Richard the kiss of life or come here today and present, so hence my it's a pleasure. We've been engaging over the last 2 years, and certainly Derek, Richard, Mac, Nick joined us at this year's conference, and I think even from that experience, discussions that took place during the breaks over dinner, we got a further understanding of some of the issues surrounding the stat fees, some of the contractual issues you guys are having, and I know from personal experience, only this week there's been some changes within some police forces in regards to the fees being passed across. So, you know, it touches upon what Terry started off as. Have these discussions, you know, we're available, we're willing, we're keen to work with you, and I think by, you know, the key thing is working together, we can make these changes happen. I'm going to just briefly talk about the Met model, and I know there's very different models across the whole of the UK. Just a quick, short insight into what we do at the Met, and then, you know, the idea behind that is to look at suggestions, ideas within your own contracts. I cover off the contracts in the Met. I think it is a weakness within the vehicle recovery industry when some of the bids come in and you see them. You know, you see times where you would question pricing that comes in. You just know, I operate trucks in London myself. Sometimes the prices that are submitted, you just couldn't do the work for it. And we certainly don't expect, and you know, I've got a long-standing relationship with a number of recovery companies. We certainly don't expect reductions in vehicle recovery fees. I don't expect free recovery, free storage. We pay for everything that we get from the recovery industry. You know, and it's a message that we've been trying to deliver through the MPCC, and it's something that we'll continue to do so. And, you know, again, it's areas where we're willing to work with you. We are guided at times by contract compliance, so we can't go and actually do it for you, but we can offer some guidance, which I think Terry was touching on. But just getting back to the Met model, 24/7 service, we do about 40,000 recoveries per year. In addition to that, to add value to the contract and for our recovery operator, we also cover a number of Met fleet recoveries, which we've now added into that contract. So the idea is, the more volume, the more vehicles, the more trucks the operator can have on the road, it gives us an overall improvement on our KPIs. We've got 2 facilities, one at Charlton, one at Forensics. I'm sure some of the people that are here today have attended one of them pounds, or their operators have attended them pounds to collect vehicles. Both sites hold about 1,000 vehicles. Both sites store forensic and non-forensic vehicles on site. Perivale is the key site within the UK for the forensic facilities. It's got state-of-the-art facilities there, so all the high-level crime stuff, we would push through that. We have police teams working within my unit, so I know it says 50 police staff at each site. I've probably got in the region of about 240 people working for me. We've got a large MSC volunteer group that works within my team as well, and they're proactively out most weekends targeting uninsured vehicles or anything to do with vehicle-related crime. I have my own contact centre, That runs 24/7, 365. That's primarily to filter some of the work that comes through, because if I do 40,000 vehicles per annum, I could double that overnight if I didn't have my own contact centre. Because cops love getting rid of cars on somebody, but you know, they're not going to be sticking 80,000 cars through my £2. So we have strict compliance in regards to the various categories of vehicles that we recover. And that's always a challenge. So the contact centre is a real battleground at times with some of the cops wanting certain things, wanting certain types of recovery, wanting certain types of truck. So that contact centre filters it out. We have our own recovery trucks, as I touched on. We've got 12 trucks on the go, 6 high, 6 side beds, and some covert vehicles that we can move vehicles around discreetly. We have other in-house functions, so as I said, I've got probably over 200 staff. It covers finance, complaints, disposals, policy, and then the MPCC work. Just very quick overview. I'm not going to go through every piece of that, but we break the vehicles down into crime and non-crime. Kind of shows you the process we go through. If it's a crime recovery, the officer contacts our control centre. Historically, it used to take about 7 phone calls to get a recovery truck out for a crime vehicle, because the officer was going through the main contact centre, coming through at my contact centre, then we'd go through at the operator's contact centre. There'd be a number of 1 questions asked, and it doubles the phone calls. So we've got it down to 1 phone call now. We will deploy in-house, or we will use our CNS, is my operator that works with us. We've got a long-standing contract with CNS Motors, very productive, and one of us will recover that vehicle, where we support each other. If our supplier is struggling in an area, I'll flood it with a number of my trucks. That helps them keep in line with the contract requirements in regards to the key performance that we expect from the recovery contracts. Non-crime's a little bit different. We've developed our Elvis system. I don't know, for those recovery operators in the room, do you use Elvis? We've developed Elvis, and we're doing further development work on it. The officer doesn't have to make any phone calls now for a Section 165 recovery. He presses a button on his phone, that goes straight through to the contact centre and straight through to the contractor, which is CNS. And there's an interface called Rubik's, which that goes through, and it's just streamlined the whole process. It speeds the whole process up. I'd say 96% of the Met's vehicle recoveries are done within 58 minutes. So, you know, working in London with some of the traffic conditions, really good stats there. Touched on in the video, you know, when the vehicles come in, we do a number of checks on them. And then when we release the vehicles, there's a number of inspections. We find, you know, as I'm sure you do in your yards, knives, drugs, firearms. But I think where we differ a little bit in the Met, we utilise the information on Elvis and we share it with various crime units within the Met. And I think, again, it touched on in the video, the Westminster Bridge attack. The individual that carried out that attack had been at Charlton Pound some weeks before that. We had his credit card details. We know the morning of the attack that he tried to hire an HGV vehicle with the card that was presented at the site. So it's sharing that intelligence, it's putting something back in crime fighting, and I think that's where, you know, again, we need to educate police forces in regards to how beneficial the vehicle recovery side can be. We've done operations in London where we've gone out and seized 600 uninsured vehicles a day, and when we've done them operations, crime stats across London, whether it be burglaries, drug-related, violent crime, drop through the floor, because one of the key tools is a vehicle. If you're drug running, if you're causing violence, you need a vehicle. And when we've done the big ops, it was really productive.
Good morning everyone, my name is Matt Wilkinson. I too work for the Metropolitan Police Service within VRES. I've got the auspicious title of Senior Policy and Legislation Advisor. but that's a bit of a false title. Much like anyone else, I'm pretty much learning it on the job as I go along, normally through blunders and things being raised and pointed in our direction, me having to go away and spend lots of time reading legislation and legal advice. So at the MPCC conference, we had a couple of topics that we presented to the police side, and some of them focused particularly on data compliance around data processing contracts, some of the issues that the Met has come across. We also went through a few bits and pieces as well around, touched on infotainment data as well, and I know a few eyebrows were raised about that as well, and that kind of ties into the data processing, probably more so on the disposal side. But there was a presentation given by TLT solicitors who the Met had hired in to basically deal with some of our data protection impact assessments. So from the start, I need to advise you, these aren't my slides, I've basically copied. So there may be terminology in there which the solicitor has put in that I generally don't understand, but I think he puts across a very valuable point. And if we go on to a second part, on the second slide, it touches on international data transfers, which there's a Schrems case which we'll touch on in a second, which is useful to know as well. So basically we all know that Data Protection Act came in 1998. For the largest part it was effectively guidance and advisory work. Then with the EU's UK GDPR provisions, that was adopted into UK law with the Data Protection Act of 2018, and that basically turned a lot of those nice to know things, guidance, advisory work, and made them legal requirements. And I think it would probably be fair to say the broader industry, this is just in public services, this is probably everyone, I think involved in business, has been struggling to catch up a little bit around data protection. But from our side, when we're starting to look at sort of contract work in particular, I think there are a number of forces that this will then promulgate down into yourselves as recovery operators, where we're leaving ourselves open. We're leaving ourselves open to legal challenges, we're leaving ourselves open to complaints through the ICO as well. So I just wanted to cover these aspects in particular, and obviously you can see out there it talks about 28.3 of UK GDPR, which is obviously a very important aspect of these contracts in particular. But the question that's asked there initially at the top there, isn't it? It's about, we don't often understand what data we collect that we really need to be managing and providing for in terms of risk. And when we think probably of data, we're thinking of really obvious things: personal data, names, dates of birth, addresses, locations, that kind of thing. Maybe special category data, we're thinking about ethnicity, gender, we're thinking about religion. But in the vehicle recovery world and with us, there's a far greater depth of information that we are capturing that falls under these provisions. When we start looking at things like pseudonymous data, so that's data detached from the individual but we can lead to them, we're talking about VRMs, we're talking about VIN numbers. So that is all data that needs to be captured under the Data Protection Act that we need to risk manage within our contracts. Banking, payment information, all of us will probably collect that as well. Processing your claims, I don't know what your model is with your police service, but it might be that I know the initial claims are done at the police station, but when somebody's coming down to collect the vehicle, are you basically recording details of identity documents? Do you record other information related to them, like driving documents, insurance documents? I don't know. At our compounds we do. And again, we have to manage that. It's all personal information. You have to account for it. You have to basically justify why you're retaining it and how you're going to use it. Another one that sort of cropped up more recently is notice letters. So most of the legal provisions we have to comply with, Section 99 of the Road Traffic Regulations Act, 165A of the Road Traffic Act, they have different requirements around notice letters that have to be sent to the registered keeper or owner of the vehicle. Some of the legislation very kindly says that we have to notify on that letter the place where the vehicle is recovered. So it says place. Other regulations don't. And you might inadvertently start disclosing the location for which a vehicle was found, and that location could invariably be somebody's home address. So you potentially could be giving a victim of a stolen vehicle the address of the suspect in which you've recovered the vehicle. And that can obviously lead to some problems. In particular, there were some changes to 165A of the Road Traffic Act, seizures. We were trying to look to see about the person who can claim a vehicle being somebody who is the registered keeper or owner at the time that the vehicle was seized, instead of being anyone who's the registered keeper or owner when eventually they come to claim the vehicle. So we see a lot of abuse around that. There was the idea as well, I think it's mentioned on here, the Criminal Justice and Police Act, Public Order Act, sorry, bringing Section 69 stat fees in line with the rest of them as well. So there was one consistent charging matrix. I have my notes here, I'm afraid. There's quite a few provisions. So we also had in there the change in definition from substantially damaged to difficult to recover. I know substantial damage has been a bit of a bone of contention within the recovery industry for some time. We also needed to ask for explicit provision to use electronic seizure notices for 165A seizures. So at the roadside, we are very much bound to using paper. I know some forces have moved to electronic, but the legislation doesn't actually allow it. So we just wanted that buttoned off. And then we were also looking to review a £350 charge for vehicles exceeding 18 tonnes as well. So there were a few provisions in there we were looking in addition to the stamp fee increase itself, and that, harmonisation with it and rate of inflation. So that went out. So the MPCC, we did a response, I think it was in a couple of weeks, wasn't it? I think within 4 weeks. So by June, we had sent our response on behalf of all police services. I think the deadline was then like the 6th of August, and I believe that there was a further extension given. And I think, if I'm looking back on it now, that extension might have been detrimental to us. The position we find ourselves in now, particularly with the chaos that's going on in number 10. So that's where we were. Everyone, I think, is very much on board here that we need that increase. We need it at least by the rate of inflation, going back to 2008. I think that's only fair and I think it's only proper. I don't think generally within the Home Office itself and the Police Powers Unit there is much objection to that. Of course, what they now need to do is get it through government, and that's where we find ourselves in particular now. We originally expected the consultation paper to be produced in January. That got delayed as a result of that extension given. Then it was a talk, I think it was July, we were told the consultation would be published. Now it's looking like maybe October, the consultation itself. So remember, this is the consultation, this isn't final sign-off. So at the moment it's going through governance. It is stuck in the Cabinet Office at the moment. The Cabinet Office have raised some concerns about some of the increases. They've come back to Terry, Mick and myself, and we're currently in the process of writing a response to that. Unfortunately, they want very particular figures from the police, so it's not something we can reach out to the recovery industry to help with. We hope to have a response by Friday into them. We tried doing a bit more of a holistic topic areas around some of the issues they raised, but they were having none of it. They definitely want sort of hard facts. But we remain optimistic, although it is delayed, we remain optimistic that we will be able to get that through. And like I said, the Home Office, Police Powers Unit are on board. They're fighting for us. Last week, Tracy, I think a few of you have met from the Home Office. She spent literally 2 days in conference calls with number 10, basically trying to battle out getting this signed off. My understanding is that Kit Morehouse has actually signed. He signed it off, but obviously it's still stuck in that final government to number 10, and it's obviously not helped by the fact that the political situation in this country is up in the air. So I had heard a statement put out by number 10 just after Boris had stepped down, and they said that there would be no policy decisions within number 10 until the new Prime Minister had been appointed. So that might be an indication for government.
I think a lot of people understand what's going on now. I think a lot of BROs, especially the ones that I've spoken to, one of their main bone of contentions with not just the increase in stamp fees, but in the increase in charges across the board, like pace and other things. Very conscious that once these rises do take place, that they're not gobbled up by third-party management companies.
Right.
Stamp fees, the increases, and we're all on the same page here, those increases need to go direct to the VRO and not split between us and management companies that are already making too much of a profit. And I think, you know, a lot of grumbling about stamp fees is based on the sharing of them or any increase with some of that. So I know we're on the same page with that, and I know that, but those are the types of points that when the government talk about victims, if you like, of the stamp fee and then rising, right, that you point out to them that, you know, some of that goes back to these third parties, and really the insurance companies should be covering that. So I can't speak for everyone in the room, but I'm sure they all agree with me in terms of whatever increases that have got, they're not gobbled up by third party AA developments or whoever they may be, they go back to the VRO, because it's been a long time coming for us. We're really, really ecstatic about the input, and I know, because I'm working with you guys, how much you're putting into it, how much you empathise with us, and how much you want to get it through. But just a reassurance for the room that when we do get these rights, when they do come in the end, that they'll be for us and not for our management.
Absolutely, Richard. And all I can probably say on behalf of Terry and Nick is that at the end of the day, MPCC can't force anyone to do anything, but it is very much the position of the MPCC, being the overseeing body, especially around vehicle recovery, that is 100% the position we would ask for from forces in particular. But I'd reiterate the point that Mick made, and that is that, you know, at the point where this becomes unviable, recovery operators need to be having those frank conversations with police services and saying the stat fees are irrelevant. I can't offer this service with the fees that I've got. You know, the real world assessment of basically providing this service is X, Y, and Z, and that might mean that the police service itself has to pay that top up. You remember the stat fee is just the mechanism by which the chief officer is able to recover their costs associated, which, you know, should be borne by the police service.
And that's right. It's too much focus is on the stat fee when it's small potatoes in terms of all the other things. Like, I keep mentioning it, but pace. I was astounded when I see some of the contracts that have been signed, and where that money's going. That money should be paying for the cost of running recovery, and the rest of the money should be coming to us. And instead of people being concerned, they want to be concerned that the public aren't paying too much for stat fees and for other stuff like that. But I think if they understood more where some of that money's going to, I think they'd be more sympathetic to what we're doing. And it's keeping our, not just our profitability, our ability to reinvest, and our ability, in some cases, our ability to stay in business. And so that's the message that needs to go back to that. And the reason why I've got VROs here today is that I want them to see you're committed to it, and you can hear and see that by the excellent presentations that you've given, by the messages that you're sending. And I think the rest of the industry would join me in thanking you very, very much for the work that you're doing, the fact that you're working with us, and the fact that you're on your site, because that's our money.
Yeah. And in particular, I think it was raised beforehand as well, I will end on this point, so I know we're massively over time, but that pace piece, for me, you know, at the MPCC conference in particular, hearing some of the arrangements around pace vehicles, to me, right, seizing vehicles under pace, raising mechanical examination, linked to criminal investigations, that's fundamentally the bread and butter of police work. The other stuff is sort of ancillary to it. Now, I know their volumes, but it's the investigation of crime, you know, prevention and detection of crime, that's what we're here to do. And when you are offering those services for virtually nothing, and that's your big cost area.
Yeah.
Providing those services, especially ISO standards coming in, you're all aware that the forensic collision investigation units are now coming online with ISO standards, so they're going to basically fall in line with your forensic provisions. So you're going to have facilities to service that as part of your contracts. That's a big investment. So you want the reassurance as well, but when it comes to storing these vehicles, which can effectively be unending, can't it? You know, we suffer from it as well. Oh, I want to retain the vehicle subject to a court order that's going to come in 3 years' time, especially with the backlog from COVID. You know, that's 3 years of potentially storing the vehicle. I've heard some horror stories recently of much longer as well. So, you know, you need to basically stop doing yourselves a disservice by offering those type of vehicles for virtually nothing, because you're trying to drive up the volume. But those vehicles are the ones that are probably costing you the most.
Yeah.
Because you're holding on for too long. Land is expensive. Having vehicles sat around for 5 years doing nothing, and especially if there's no mechanism in the contract for you to go back to the police, and then, you know, we have the ability, because we are the police, to go back into offices and say, right, this vehicle's been here for, you know, 2 months. What's happening with it? Oh, well, I want to retain it. No, well, I need an inspector's authority. You know, and we will cross-charge. We cross-charge within there. So to incentivise officers to release vehicles, we cross-charge them, and that works. Yeah.
But the other thing that we've got to take responsibility in, which makes it difficult, is that before we sign these contracts that say that we'll store these vehicles for nothing, we need to look very closely at what we're signing up to, because it's not about buying contracts anymore. It's about running contracts at a profit, and so we can stay in business to supply the services that we want to supply. I am conscious that we're running short of time, but I'm sure everybody in the room, has it been worthwhile? Have they got a lot to say? And are we in agreement with that?
Absolutely.
So can we show our appreciation for them coming, please?
Good That's
you done then, Matt.
One question, why was the consultation extended?
I won't say. Maybe
You
it's
get
not
Terry
right.
up there, Terry.
Yeah, Terry.
I was all right, Terry.
No, I mean, we would have got it over the line, there's no doubt about that. There was a 6-week extension, absolutely not of our making. We've done it within 2 weeks, all 43 forces. There is another association, unfortunately, that delayed it. I'm not going to say any names, you've probably worked it out. And I know if it wasn't for that, I'm absolutely 100% confident that it would have been in by now. And it's not of our making, I can assure you.